and welcome back to the 40% Better podcast. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We've got Kevin on. Kevin is a I'm going to say laughter expert and comedian and communication guy. And because communication is so important in leadership, I felt like it was really worthwhile to get his perspective, his thoughts, his insights, because I see that so often the thing that team leads, managers, people at all different areas of the org chart struggle with is effective communication. And if, as humans, we can't communicate well, then number one, we can't get our point across. Number two, we can't get what we want in terms of either inside or outside of an organization. So I'm really looking forward to hearing all of Kevin's wisdom, insights, and maybe we'll laugh a little bit too at the same time.
No guarantees. No guarantees on the laughter. We'll do our best. Thanks for having me, Bill.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for being willing to do this and put yourself out there. You know?
Of course.
Yeah. I'm sure this is not as it's not as emotionally risky as getting up on stage and doing stand-up is or doing improv. There's no hecklers and no one's going to throw fruit from the audience. That would be very cool.
Yeah, and I mean, my dog might run in here at any moment, and she might bark. So who knows? But
okay, great.
That's the equivalent of a heckler at your own home. But that just means I got to take her out, and that's a good thing.
I'm if the Riverside folks ever listen to this, I want a virtual heckler feature added to the app because I think that would be amazing. That would be so funny.
You know, we do so many virtual comedy shows on the corporate side of things, and that was something that we were really nervous about in the beginning, that there was going to be a lot of like hecklers, and there sort of was, but then like once people got comfortable and it was in like a corporate setting, they were realizing like, oh, we can't heckle at work. So it was actually the perfect environment for virtual comedy because the like comedy clubs that went to virtual during the pandemic, that was the biggest problem. It was like, you know, you need audiences to stay on their microphones or on their cameras because you need the laughter, you need the feedback. But everyone was like the wild, wild west when it was like no one to hold them accountable. So you'd have people just ruining the shows. So a lot of comics were like, I don't want to do virtual comedy. But with the corporate stuff that we did, and we still do a ton of them now, that was the most interesting thing is that these hecklers went away because HR was going to be like, why'd you disrespect the company like that? And we even had that once or twice where there was a guy that like wouldn't shut up. He was heckling like crazy. It was more like and the heckle can come in a lot of ways, but like mainly a heckle is a distraction. It's someone that's like trying to make the show about them rather than allowing a craftsman to do their job on stage. And it was so funny because this guy was being so annoying. And then suddenly you saw like 15 minutes passed and then he was like, he interrupted again, but he interrupted to be like, sorry that I was interrupting. I promise not to interrupt again. Like he had gotten an email from HR during the event. And I was like, I can get used to this. This is a nice, safe space for comics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, oh, that's funny. So, the one question that I always ask guests is kind of, what's the origin story? Were you like leading comedy shows at 5, or you know, was it something that came on later?
So I'm the youngest of 6 kids, and so if I was to say my origin story, it started at the dinner table. It started at, you know, being my oldest brother's 15 years older than me, and everything trickled down. So, you know, I was exposed to comedy at a really young age through, you know, my older brothers who were in their teens when I was, you know, just out of the womb. So I got to get just so many great references and so many great comedians early on, and I got introduced to comedy probably far earlier than, you know, any other people my age. So that was one component. And then like at the dinner table, you know, they didn't want to hear from me if I didn't have anything good to say. So I also like had a muzzle on for a little bit, or like, if I was going to say something, you had to kind of make it work within the first 5 seconds, or else someone would literally go next. You know what I mean? So it was a crazy environment, but it was so fun. And so I always look at that as my origin story of like, hey, that's what got me interested in comedy and loved comedy. And then it wasn't until I moved to New York City after college that I actually started to train in comedy. And I tried improv, was training 3 hours a week for about a year with my two brothers and my best friends. We had a group called the Brothers in Flaws, and we'd go to my brother's apartment and we'd move the furniture out of the way and we would just do improv after work, and it was just the best. Like, we would just laugh our butts off, having a great time. But then it was like the next day I would go into work and I was like leveled up. I everything was slower. I was communicating better. I suddenly started to see these like comedy skills that I was training with the hopes of just being better at comedy and immersing myself in comedy. They were turning into professional skills, and people call those skills soft skills now, and have been. But that's what I didn't realize that I was training in, and that was the first time in this origin story of that is my life now, where I was like, oh wow, comedy is an excellent training ground for the professional world.
That is super cool. That self-awareness of like, oh, last night my brother and my friend and I were doing this thing, and now today I'm better at communicating. That's a really interesting aha moment. If you kind of like break it down, what were some of the things that you and your brother and your friend were doing that you think other than just having to think fast, which in and of itself may be like a huge part of this.
Yeah.
But yeah, like if you're like, I always think about systems, right? Like what kind of mental model did you have going into those evening training sessions?
Yeah, we always went into those evening training sessions being like, I am exhausted. We should reschedule this. And we left them going, I can't go to sleep. That was so much fun. So it was like a really interesting thing going into it, but then realizing after, like, whoa, what is biologically happening to us when we're doing this? So that was like a very interesting experience to have. But when it comes to improv, and you said thinking faster, thinking on your feet faster, that's really important. But in order to do that, you have to slow everything else down. And so to think fast, you need to slow down. And how do you do that? And there's little different moments that are a little different, not exercises, but things you have to think about when you're doing. And that is actively listening. You need to be willing to take a step back, listen to your scene partner, listen to your environment, listen to the environment that was created by your scene partner, and say, I'm going to take my next choice by listening to the person that just said something. I'm going to forget about what my idea was and what I had planned on doing, because improv is not about planning. Improv is about being in the moment, being very conscious of your environment, and then making the next most smart, they say playing at the top of your intelligence. What's the next move that you can make that is going to move the scene forward and it's going to progress the scene forward? So that is really applicable in life, right? Whether that's in a business setting, in a personal setting. How can I be in the moment and not think about a canned question or a canned answer or even an idea that I have? And how can I say in the nicest way possible to myself, this is a phrase I heard all the time in improv, was F your good idea. And it was like, keep that to yourself and listen to your partner and listen to the person that you're exchanging with, because that's going to dictate where the conversation goes. Because what you're doing is you're validating the person that you're talking to say, yeah, I love that idea, and here's what I have to say. And so that was really important. So listening, I think, is like such a huge foundational piece of it all. And then that's where everything else can fall into play. Because if you're listening to your partner and you're saying, I'm in here, I'm present, then you're creating a supportive environment. Then you're saying like, okay, I'm listening to you. I've got your back. Okay. That means that whatever you say, I'm going to be like, how can I keep the conversation going? How can I keep this dynamic flowing? So like, it doesn't matter. You can take a chance. I'm going to be out there on that plank with you. Let's rip it. You know, we got each other's backs. And then that then leads to like effective communication. What words are we using to make sure that we're playing this perfect game of volleyball? You know, how are we passing it back and forth with each other? How are we not stopping the conversation with words like no or but or? How can we really focus on like, what are we saying that could either pause momentum? More importantly, what can we focus on words or phrases or, even emotions that can continue positive momentum?
I really like that. And as you're talking, the phrase in my head that pops up is psychological safety. Mm-hmm. Is that if I know in the conversation that you've got my back, that's psychological safety. And that's a huge, what's the word I want? It's a huge benefit in team performance when everybody feels psychologically safe. And it's one of those things where the techniques for achieving psychological safety aren't part of our normal conversations, and especially not for the part of which applies to leaders and managers the most is how can I behave with my people so that they feel more psychologically safe? Mm-hmm. And what you're talking about there is a really good example. I love that because that's the here's the behavior that you do in the moment kind of a thing. I really like that. The other thing about that strikes me is if you know how to do that kind of ad lib conversation, continuation, being present, then it feels to me like it makes it a lot easier to be in like doing a presentation and somebody goes, hey, I got a question.
Yeah.
Right? It's a lot, having the self-confidence, because a lot of what I'm hearing sounds like it built your self-confidence also. And if you're doing that presentation, you have the self-confidence, then somebody goes, hey, I don't get it, or are you sure about the data, or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's really easy to go, oh, I hear that you're concerned about the data. I get it. And here's how it all gets generated, right? Like it's a really easy flow, and it's easy to be relaxed about getting up and doing that. And most people have some degree of trepidation about doing presentations until they've done 100.
I think that's you actually hit the nail on the head. Like, I don't think that you can just wake up one day and you go, I'm good at presentations.
Right.
You can't wake up one day and be like, well, I don't know what I worried about there.
Right.
I mean, you can, like, if you had a lobotomy maybe, but like what you actually need are reps. So you need those reps. And that is also, I said 3 hours a day or 3 hours a week for a year. That's a ton of reps that I did that allowed me to do that. But also while I was doing that, I was in sales. I was doing 5 sales calls a day. I was cold calling people. So like I'm getting reps of getting comfortable. And I do think people always like, oh, well, you're naturally good at it. It's like, no, I'm not naturally good at it. But I really made it a point early on in my life to be like, okay, if someone, even as early as when I was a kid, hey, who wants to read out loud? I was the guy that was like, let me read out loud. I was like, let me do that. Or, I was the president of my high school, and I would give speeches every month. Nobody saw that behind that podium, my legs were shaking like they were twigs. I was so scared and nervous talking to 500 people, going every time, why did I sign up for this? But people only saw, head above. So it was, I think those reps helped me. And then again, having comedy, having improv be like very low stakes reps. And I think that's where that became valuable is a lot of people go, well, how do I get those reps? Well, you can get low stakes reps everywhere. You know, you can get low stakes reps having a conversation with a friend, having a phone call with your family. You can have, you know, low stakes reps just getting coffee with a coworker. You know, there's reps that are like these micro reps. I always say, how do you find your own stage? And if you ask any comic in the world, they'll say like, how do I get better at stand-up comedy? They say get on stage. That's the number one thing. They get more stage time, and they go, well, what else? They go, oh, let me think, more stage time. So it's like reps are everything. And especially if you can find reps that have very low stakes, it allows you to go, I am presenting in this high stakes situation, but does it have to be so high stakes? I have a lot of reps doing lower stakes stuff. And like I can get into that mindset and that comfortability. I've been here before. You know, I think they say, you know, if you practice, I mean, it's a very sports analogy, you know, you practice as hard as you play. So if you practice really hard, the game is really easy. So I think that also applies there is that you're getting those reps during the week. To make a football reference, these people are getting the reps during the week so that on Sunday the games are really easy. And I think that's what is everybody's Sunday, but what are they doing Monday through Friday, taking a rest day so they don't get crushed. And so that when that high stakes rep is, they're ready, and it doesn't feel so high stakes because they've gotten a lot of the reps in.
I really okay. I'm gonna plagiarize low stakes reps. I hate to tell you that, but I love that. I love that phrasing because it's as you're talking, I'm like, oh, that's how I got over my social anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Was I did a bunch of low stakes, deliberately did a bunch of low stakes reps, and you know when one particular thing got easy, then I went, okay, what's the next level? Mm-hmm. And again, it was just stacking low stakes reps one on top of the other to get comfortable in bigger and bigger and bigger situations. You know,
it's that neuroplasticity that your brain is making. You're making new neural pathways so that when you come up in the environment again, your brain's going, we've walked down this road before.
Right.
And the more you do it, that road was first had a lot of rocks on it. Now the road's got gravel on it. Now that gravel is pavement. And now we can fly on this road. And so I think that those reps help build that neuroplasticity. So when you're doing those low stakes, your brain is like, yo, we've been here before. And then maybe a little bit more people in the audience. And we don't need to pretend like they're in their underwear. I don't know where that came from. Let's pretend like we've just been there before. And let's get those reps in.
Yeah. That's a really good phraseology. I love that, and I've never heard anybody use that phrasing before, and I like that.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's very cool. So you started off like super early. Like this was it sounds like a very natural environment that you kind of went, okay, I'm going to go down this road starting when you were a kid. When you're working with people, what kinds of friction do they have that you consistently see to help them get comfortable and relaxed?
Well, you know what we actually did was we stopped using the word improv. That was a big thing that people would go, improv? No way. And I think that was one of our biggest things was going, we got to stop freaking people out by using the word improv because improv has either been mocked or it's on a really high pedestal. It's one or the other. It's either like theater, like college theater, improv group, and that's how you think about it, or it's whose line is it anyways? And it's like, I'm not as funny as those people. And so we have found ourselves that like, we don't want to be associated with either one of those. It's either too hard or it's not cool type of thing. So we changed that environment when we stopped calling it improv and we started calling it laughing and development, because that is what it is. We are going to be doing applied improv exercises and applied stand-up environments that are going to allow us to create this micro stage, this low stake stage with other people that are going to allow you to professionally develop, to allow you to do team building. And the best thing about improv, you ask anybody who's an improv professional, the goal is not to be funny. And I think that's what people think. They go, oh, improv, I can't do it. I'm not funny. Or like, hey, you're going to make me laugh. If you actually go for a joke in improv, you have the potential to ruin the entire scene. You have the potential to really make it bad, because it's a very selfish move to go, here's my joke. If the joke didn't make sense in the line of everything else. Now, if the joke makes sense as I listen to the person before me and I'm now making a joke that adds on to it, then it makes sense. But like, nobody needs to go into it being like, I gotta be funny. So the laughter comes from following those rules, from actively listening, from positively communicating, and from creating the supportive environment. And the most benign things, I'm telling you, small words make the biggest laughs in improv. Some just honest reactions have the biggest laughs in improv. It's not Robin Williams style acting and movement and things like that, although that is the greatest form of comedy. I love Robin Williams. It's not what we do. So we had to reframe it, and we had to say, hey, that's not what we're doing. We're using those skills that professional improvisers and professional comedians use. That's what they have done. They have done this at one point, so you can see how good they got. But that's what we're doing. This is a training environment. This is an environment that's safe. There's no audience. There's each other. And we're in this together. We're on an equal playing ground. So it took a little bit of that education to be like, let's just reframe this to start off the top and not call it this really scary word. And on my newsletter, laughrx.laugh.events, people can find it there. I have an article called Improv is a Dirty Word. And it's because that is a phrase that freaks people out. And so that was really helpful, is when we started reframing it. Because what happens is, like, I reframe it to you, and then you go to your team and go, who wants to do laughing and development? And that's really why we reframed it, because I'm actually trying to help you get your team to do something a little bit different, a little bit out of the box. But if you, Bill, went and said, who wants to do improv? There's going to be like 2 people in there that emphatically raise their hands, and 10 other people that turn their chairs around and go, I'd rather not.
Right. Yeah. I'm not sure I'd even get 2 to emphatically raise their hands. So that's a very optimistic perspective.
But those people who emphatically raise their hands have done it before, and they get it. And that was like a thing that I had to. I couldn't rely on that's the beauty, and improv is genuinely magic, because the people who have done it, they get it. But I could not rely on the 10% of the population that had done it before, because there was the 80% that had it, their minds in a certain different type of mindset. So that is where I said, okay, let's start from scratch and let's kind of break down what this really is.
I really like that. Part of what I'm hearing in this that I really love is this people being better humans and communicating better. With the rise of AI, what's going on in your world with that?
I think that I use AI every day. I love it. I love using AI. It's really great for automating tasks that would otherwise take a long time. It's great for research. It has a ton of different applications. I think what people need to be wary of AI is how you're using it. And when you start turning your brain off and let it think for you. And so there was a great article that came out. It was like about ChatGPT and how it's making you dumber. It's like people that are using it, it's making them dumber. And it was about a case study about people who like used it to write a paper versus people who didn't use it to write a paper. The whole idea was about convergent versus divergent thinking. And so AI is really great at convergent thinking. You know, it's like, hey, 1 + 1 = 2. That's a fact. That is like that is the mindset that you can really use AI for. It's like these are sort of facts, and let's think through that mindset and that flow. Whereas divergent thinking is coming up with ideas and throwing stuff at a wall and seeing what sticks. And it's really what makes us human. So that is really what improv is excellent for, is for training that divergent muscle that goes, how can I brainstorm 10 bad ideas right now? And that'll help you get to one good idea. How can I come up with 10 new taglines for this, or 10 new problems? Or, I always like to do these different exercises. I said in the beginning, like, come up with 10 bad ideas, because that helps you get one good one. Like, those different training exercises, it's just about having your brain come up with more unique ideas. And I think that that's a really great way to train your brain. We ask your team, instead of asking what's going wrong with our project, what's going right with our project? Have them list 10 different ideas of, hey, what's going right? And not only does that like help the mindset of be like, hey, things actually aren't as bad as we're like telling them to be, but it's also a good divergent thinking training. And you're allowing yourself to spit out new ideas. And I always encourage people, like, if you're thinking of like, how do I come up with a good idea? Try the opposite thing first, right? Come up with 10 bad ideas, or come up with 10 reasons it's good. Or like me and my wife, when we see a bad movie, we keep watching it. And then afterwards we list 10 reasons why we thought it was the worst movie we'd ever seen. And so like, it's just like fun things like that allow your brain to keep going. And then when you do need an idea, you don't need to ask ChatGPT, can you give me some ideas? You can start to go into your own brain and your own experiences and say, okay, I am not someone that's relying on that, and I have a really strong divergent thinking brain. Let me work that muscle.
I like that. I like that divergent versus convergent framing. And that is not I don't remember anybody like talking about AI like that in the past.
I'm dropping nuggets here, Bill.
You are, yeah. It's really good. I was not expecting that. I mean, I was expecting nuggets, but I'm like, oh my God, that's so cool. Because, for me, I guess my challenge has been, I keep going to AI looking for divergent thinking, and I get super frustrated because I can't get it. But the way that you explained that, right, and I wasn't realizing this till you just said that. And as you said, I was like, oh, ding, 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 no wonder I can't get what I want out of it. It doesn't work that way. And I think that, people that I know who either A, are really happy with it, or B, are super frustrated, the ones that are happy are probably looking for convergent stuff. And the ones who, like me, get frustrated they're looking for the divergent stuff, and they're like, how come I can't get this out of this thing? What's the problem? Oh, that totally makes sense. I really like that. That is awesome. What are some of the common when you're working with teams, like, do you have a standardized structure when you're working with a team, or a standardized approach, or is the whole thing organic, or like, how does that work?
So there's like hundreds of improv exercises that people can do. So we definitely have like a structure in terms of like, hey, we're going to ramp people up so that they're doing less scary things in the beginning, dipping their toes in until they can make like a very nice cannonball at the end and kind of surprise everybody with something awesome. But like, I would say that that's the thing that's most consistent across our workshops, is that we're focused on like creating a good environment, dipping people's toes into it, so that, because the first 5 minutes people are like, what, oh my gosh, I'm so scared to do this, or I don't want to do this. So we need to win them over in that first exercise that we do, and then we need to win them over in the second one, and then by the 15-minute mark or 20-minute mark, they're like all in. And my favorite moment is when we do that and people are like, who are sitting on the sidelines because for some reason the company made it optional to participate, when those people get up at the 15-minute mark and they go, this is actually a lot easier than I thought it would be. This isn't, my conception of this is way different. So that is like the most, the structure that we do the most. But, the way that we approach every workshop that we do of laughing and development is we have the event organizer. They complete a pre-event survey that tells us everything that they're looking for. Are they looking for professional development, team building, play, silliness, thinking out of the box, getting out of your comfort zone? If they check every one of those boxes, amazing. We're going to put together, a curriculum that we think fits that. But then we can take it even deeper and we ask them, hey, what is your actual reason for doing this? What are your company's themes or goals, or like an objective that you have for taking this time away from the office? And then that allows us, every time we do an exercise, to bring it back to their why. And that is really what makes our events different, is that, sure, we're going to create an awesome workshop, but then we're going to remind you as to like, hey, that silly thing that we did that reminded you that you were in that felt like you were in like drama class in elementary school. This is why that's applicable. Helps communication. It helps active listening. It helps to make eye contact. It helps to do all of these different things. And I like to say it's these laughing and development sessions, they remind me a lot of when Mr. Miyagi is teaching Danny LaRusso and the Karate Kid to wax on and wax off. And then suddenly Danny's like, why am I doing this? This doesn't make any sense. This is not teaching me karate. And then suddenly he's able to like block a kick from Johnny or block a punch and like actually move things forward. So that is really what it is. It's a lot of like subliminal teaching by allowing people to play. Like, we're giving them an environment to play. And Plato himself said it. You can learn a lot more about people in an hour of play than in a lifetime of knowing them. I'm butchering the quote, but it's something like that. And so long ago. But that is like the idea, is like, how can we create this environment of play where people are just like feeling loose, and then like people start to become more authentically themselves. And so that is important, is like, how can we get that authenticity out of people so that they've taken, because a lot of people go into work, I always say, with a 9 to 5 personality. I did it myself for a long, long time. But the moment that I started to bring my 5 to 9 personality was when people started to like me better, trust me more, listen to me more, and I started to level up professionally. So that's another important thing, is in these workshops, we're trying to get people's 5 to 9 personalities out, because everyone already knows their 9 to 5 personalities. They work with them every day. That's why they got hired for the job interview. Their skill sets, but their 5 to 9 personality. What allows you to make that connection with another person that says like, okay, I know this person on a deeper level because we just did this silly exercise together, because it really does make a huge impact.
I like that. And it is the getting that authenticity of what somebody is really like, and getting them. I think part of that whole getting the 5 to 9 in there is it goes back to psychological safety again. It's like, how can you just be comfortable and relaxed and operate in a way that's effective with the team, just like you operate in a way that's effective with your family or the guys that you surf with, or what people you mountain bike with, or whatever it happens to be, right?
Totally.
People in your yoga class. I like that. Yeah. And there's this underlying. It's a. At the end of the day, like I just feel like there's so much self-confidence built when you can go in and do something like this that really helps people communicate across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, that's very cool. I really like that. Yeah, that's very cool. Trying to think if there's any other like huge questions I have, and I'm not running into any. I'm going to make sure that all your contact info is in the show notes for this, because I think, especially for software engineers, because I don't mean to throw stones at my own people, but I'm going to anyway. They'll all be soft. They'll be beanbag. So, but people get into technology because they aren't comfortable communicating. I mean, that's one of the reasons I got into software development, was because I was shy introvert, and then I realized rapidly I had to learn how to talk to people, which completely ruined my whole like, I don't have to talk to people ever again. I can just write code and I'll be good. And I've met so many engineers that was also their frame, and them being able to have tools to get out of that mental model that they're not going to be talking to people, that they're just going to be a coder, because especially with AI doing more and more coding, people need to be able to communicate better.
Yeah.
Because it's what makes you valuable to the organization. Like,
Yeah.
if all you can do is code, well, I got an AI that can do that, and there's no one that's coding well enough that inability to communicate is an acceptable behavior, right? Like every great coder I've ever met, they also could talk. I've never met somebody who was a great coder but couldn't talk that actually got anything done. So I love this, and yeah, definitely. I think anybody who listens, who wants to think about how to get better communication, should be talking to you, because you've got a whole thing going on there that's completely not within the frame of how we operate. Like it's so cool. I really like it. Yeah.
Well, it's actually funny when we do these events with engineers, and they're set up by like an office manager. They always preface it with like, "Hey, there's a group of engineers. They're very introverted. So like we're kind of on the fence. We're taking a leap."
Right. Right.
The engineers are the ones that are honestly have the most vibrant personalities. Like, and so it was creating the environments for them to bring that out.
Yep.
Is everything. And I think that like when I worked at a startup as the only salesperson of 10 people and the other 9 people were engineers, I loved it. Like I loved it. Every one of the engineers that I worked with, they think so much differently than me, but their creativity is to the moon.
Right.
They have such creativity and they display it a lot online, in emojis, in GIFs, in a lot of different creative ways that they're comfortable with doing online. And I think that it just goes back to like, is my company creating reps for me to be able to communicate in person? And I think that like there's so much effective ways, speed to be able to effectively communicate online. Like that's everything. And I think that engineers are so awesome at communicating online, and the way that they can get better of communication, of rounding that out, is allowing their managers to give them reps and say, hey, this is the forced fun that we're about to have, and doing these kinds of exercises, because it's going to level you up. And it's not just us going and getting a beer. There's a time for that, absolutely, to hang out with everybody. But like there are other ways that we can kind of create low stakes reps. And that goes back to what we had said in the beginning. These are excellent low stakes reps. They mean nothing, but they have such an impact on everything.
Yeah, I love that idea. Yeah, that's such a... that is such a profound concept, and I think the more different ways that can happen is like in all kinds of contexts is so valuable. And like, yeah, I'm borrowing that phrase from you.
You got it.
Yeah.
It's now licensed to you at the moment. I love
I
it.
love it. Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate it. Every time I get paid for using that, I'll send you a royalty.
Send me those 5 cents.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Oh, this has been awesome. So this has been great. Thank you so much. I'm going to kill the recording now.
Okay.
This has been beautiful. And anybody who wants to talk with Kevin, contact information will be down in the show notes. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.